President Joe Biden's son Hunter will plead guilty to not paying federal taxes and a separate gun charge in a deal with federal prosecutors.
Now, the deal means he likely won't serve any prison time for the charges, but as Mike Valeria reports, it won't stop a wide-ranging congressional investigation into his business dealings.
Hunter Biden, the son of President Joe Biden, will plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax offenses and struck a deal with federal prosecutors to resolve a felony gun charge. According to prosecutors, Hunter Biden owed at least $100,000 in federal taxes in both 2017 and 2018, but did not pay what was due to the IRS by the deadlines. Last year, a lawyer for the president's son said his client has since, quote, fully paid those IRS debts. The 53-year-old also struck a deal with federal prosecutors to resolve 1 felony gun charge. In 2021 interviews with the media, Hunter Biden talked about how he'd been addicted to drugs, which raised the possibility he broke federal law when he bought a firearm. The White House issued a statement saying, quote, the president and first lady love their son and support him as he continues to rebuild his life. We will have no further comment. Former President Donald Trump slammed the plea deal. Writing on Truth Social, it equates to a mere traffic ticket. The U.S. Attorney for Delaware, David Weiss, appointed by former President Trump, says the Hunter Biden investigation is ongoing. Republican Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy says the agreement won't impact a Republican congressional probe into the Biden family's business dealings.
It actually should enhance our investigations because the DOJ should not be able to withhold any information now.
I'm Mike Valerio reporting.